He started by carrying a man's shoes. He ended by owning Japan. This is how he did it. Welcome to the Bushi Files. 1537, a village outside Nagoya. No walls, no castle, no name worth remembering. A boy is born to a peasant farmer and his wife. The father dies young. The family has nothing. In the Japan of 1537, your birth determines everything. Your class, your future, your ceiling. And this boy was born at the bottom. He had no surname. In a society where family names meant everything, he had none. His mother remarried, his stepfather had no use for him. So the boy left. He was roughly 10 years old. No money, no connections, no protection. He walked out of that village and into a world that was on fire. Japan in the mid-1500s was not a country. It was a battlefield. The Sengoku period, the age of warring states, had been grinding for nearly a century. Warlords rose and fell. Armies crossed rivers and burned what they found on the other side. It was a terrible time to be nobody. It was also the only time in Japanese history when nobody could become somebody. The boy's name at this point was Hideyoshi Maru, Little Sun Boy. He would earn several more names before he was done. Chapter 2. Rise. He found his way into service, first as a kitchen boy, then as an errand runner. Eventually, somehow, he got himself attached to a minor lord's household. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And then, around 1558, he did the thing that changed everything. He entered the service of Oda Nobunaga. Nobunaga was 24. He had just consolidated his home province by force, and he was looking for men who were fast, adaptable, and loyal. The boy with no name took the job of Sandal-Bearer, Ozori Tori, the man who carries the master's footwear, the lowest rank in a warlord's household. There is a famous story, possibly embellished, but it tells you something true. Nobunaga arrived in the cold and asked for his sandals. They were warm, warmer than they should have been. The sandal-bearer had slept with them against his body to keep them from freezing. Nobunaga noticed. That's all it took. One act of initiative that nobody else had thought of. Nobunaga began to use him, first for small tasks, then larger ones. The sandal-bearer became a page, then a foot soldier, then a commander. He had a gift that no one could teach. He could read a room, read a situation, understand what the powerful man across from him actually needed, even when the powerful man didn't know himself. He rebuilt a crumbling castle in record time. He managed supply lines. He negotiated with hostile parties. He never stopped moving. By 1570, he was commanding armies. By 1575, he was one of Nobunaga's most trusted generals. The boy with no name was now called Kinoshita Tokichiro, and he was just getting started. Chapter 3. 12 Days. June 21st, 1582. Oda Nobunaga is dead, betrayed by one of his own generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, and cornered at the Honnoji Temple in Kyoto. Japan's most powerful man has been killed by morning. The news spreads, panic spreads with it. Every general in Nobunaga's army is now a potential successor, and every potential successor knows that the man who moves first and fastest wins. Hideyoshi is 400 kilometers away, in the middle of a siege. Deep in western Japan, fighting the Mori clan in what is called the Chugoku campaign. He receives the news in secret. He tells no one. Then he does something remarkable. He negotiates a truce with the Mori. In under a day, ending a campaign that had lasted years. He sells it as a mutual withdrawal. The Mori don't know Nobunaga is dead. If they knew, the deal collapses. He moves fast enough that they don't find out in time, and then he marches. 20 to 30,000 men, 400 kilometers of mountainous terrain. In 12 days. The Chugoku Ogaishi, the Great Retreat from Chugoku, is one of the most extraordinary logistical achievements in Japanese military history. He arrives. He faces Akechi Mitsuhide at the Battle of Yamazaki. 13 days after Nobunaga's death, Akechi is dead. 13 days. The succession crisis had lasted less than 2 weeks, and Hideyoshi had already won it. He called this revenge for Nobunaga. He meant it. But he also understood, with cold precision, what it meant politically. He was now the man who avenged the Demon King. No one in Japan could touch that. Chapter 4. Taking the country. But winning a battle is not the same as ruling a country. Nobunaga's other generals were not impressed. They were rivals. Shibata Katsui, Nobunaga's most senior commander, had his own claim, his own army, his own ambition. The confrontation came at the Battle of Shizugatake in 1583. Hideyoshi won. Then came Tokugawa Ieyasu, the cautious man in the east who had built his own power quietly, watching everything. They fought to a standstill at Komaki and Nagakute. No clear winner, a negotiated peace. Hideyoshi made Ieyasu's mother a hostage, gently, diplomatically, and sent his own sister as a bride. A political solution where a military one had failed. By 1590, the last major holdout, the Hojo clan in the east, had fallen to his siege of Odawara Castle. Japan was unified for the first time in over a century. The man with no name, no family, no land, now ruled everything. Chapter 5. The architecture of control, and then he did something that reveals exactly who he was. He pulled the ladder up behind him. The sword hunt of 1588, an edict that ordered all weapons confiscated from farmers and monks. The official reason, preventing unrest. Melting the swords down to build a statue of the Buddha. The real reason, no peasant would ever do what Hideyoshi had done again. He had come from the bottom. He knew the path, and he closed it. He formalized the class system. Warriors were warriors, farmers were farmers. You could not cross the line. The Taiko Kenchi, the land surveys that followed, codified every piece of ground in Japan. Who owned it? What it produced? What taxes it owed? These were not just administrative measures. They were a new architecture of power. Hideyoshi was remaking Japan in a form where his position at the top could never be threatened by someone like him. He also banned Christianity, not from religious conviction, but from political calculation. Christian lords had foreign connections. Foreign connections meant foreign power. Foreign power was a threat. The Bateran Edict of 1587 ordered Jesuit missionaries out of Japan. It was not fully enforced, not yet. But the direction was set, control, total, methodical, elegant control. Chapter 6. The Tea Master. At his peak, Hideyoshi held something few rulers ever achieve. Not just military control, cultural authority. He was a devotee of the tea ceremony, the most refined, most political ritual in Japanese elite life. And his tea master was Sen no Rikyu. Rikyu was not a soldier or a politician, he was an artist. The greatest practitioner of chado, the way of tea, in Japanese history. The relationship between these two men was the defining cultural relationship of the late Sengoku period. Rikyu advised Hideyoshi, shaped his aesthetics, gave the conqueror a sense of refinement he had not been born with. And then, in 1591, Hideyoshi ordered Rikyu to commit ritual suicide. The reasons have been debated ever since. A wooden statue of Rikyu erected at a temple gate, forcing Hideyoshi to walk beneath the feet of a commoner. A disagreement over the sale of tea equipment. A political dispute disguised as an aesthetic one. We don't know the exact cause, we know that Rikyu obeyed. He wrote a death poem. He performed the ritual with perfect composure. And we know that the man who ordered it spent the rest of his life surrounded by the objects Rikyu had taught him to love. It tells you everything about Hideyoshi's power and its limits. Even at the top, he was afraid of something. Chapter 7. Korea. 1592. Japan invades Korea. This is the decision that historians still struggle to fully explain. Japan had been unified. The country was stable. Hideyoshi was at the height of his power, and he launched an invasion of the Korean peninsula with the stated goal of eventually conquering China. The initial advance was stunning. Japanese forces reached Seoul in weeks, then Pyongyang, and then everything stopped. Korean Admiral Yi Sun-sin, one of the most gifted naval commanders in history, destroyed the Japanese supply lines at sea. The Battle of Hansen Island was a catastrophe for Japan. Without supplies, the land advance stalled. Chinese forces entered on Korea's side. The campaign ground into a brutal stalemate. A ceasefire in 1593. Then, in 1597, Hideyoshi ordered a second invasion. It went worse. Why did he do it? Historians have offered many explanations. To give his warlords, men trained for war, something to fight. A unified Japan had no internal enemies. External conquest was a pressure valve to secure a legacy beyond Japan. The peasant king who unified an island needed something bigger to prove he belonged. Or simply, he had reached the edge of reason. The paranoia and grandiosity that sometimes come with unchecked power. Whatever the reason, it cost hundreds of thousands of lives, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, and it produced nothing. Chapter 8. Decline, 1598. Hideyoshi is dying. He has one son, Hideyori, born late in his life, 5 years old. His deepest fear is not death. It is what happens after. He assembles the 5 most powerful lords in Japan, the Council of 5 Regents, and extracts oaths from each of them to protect his son until Hideyori comes of age. Tokugawa Ieyasu is among them. Hideyoshi reportedly wept as he made his final requests. "I ask that you take care of my son. I leave everything in your hands. I am sorry to keep troubling you even as I depart this world." He died on September 18, 1598. The Korean campaign, still ongoing, was recalled. Tokugawa Ieyasu, who had waited patiently for 30 years, began to move. The Council of Regents lasted 2 years. At Sekigahara in 1600, Ieyasu destroyed the coalition opposing him. In 1615, Osaka Castle fell. Hideyori died in the fire. Everything Hideyoshi had built passed to the Tokugawa. Chapter 9. Legacy. What made him truly remarkable was not how he fought, but how he changed Japan forever. The class system he formalized lasted until 1868. The land surveys underpinned Japan's agricultural economy for centuries. The architecture of the state he built, its methods of control, its administrative logic, became the template the Tokugawa would refine and use for 250 years. He gave Japan its first experience of true national unity. And in doing so, he created the conditions for the longest period of peace in Japanese history. The man had no right to any of it, no bloodline, no family name, no inheritance. He walked out of a village with nothing and built something that lasted. History is full of men born to power. Hideyoshi was something rarer, a man who took it. This has been the Bushi Files. Until next time, stay curious.